How to calculate listen time. The latest from Podnews.net with CBC Podcasts looking for their next podcast hit. In a minute, more details of the YouTube podcast test that we reported on yesterday. But first, how are you measuring your podcast success? Downloads are easy, but Bumper is suggesting listen time as the right metric, and they've published a detailed method of calculating it. Visi Studio has added YouTube video as an output to the company's popular podcast enhancement platform. The software also adds visual chapters to shows that work on many players, including Apple Podcasts. Airwave Media has launched Airwave Kids, a major expansion into the kids and family category. Acquisitions include Tumble Science podcast for kids, What If World, and Sleep Tight Stories. In Australia, the IAB has announced a new industry digital audience measurement currency called Ipsos Iris. The technology is already used in the UK and will initially be used for TV figures, but it could be used for other media types too in future. The SiriusXM podcast network remains number one in the latest data from Edison Podcast Metrics for the US. The Acast Creator Network is new at number 9. Memento is an AI-powered tool for podcasters that grabs the best shareable clips of podcasts, produces transcripts, and automates social media. It became publicly available today. Rode has announced the 5th generation of their NT1 condenser microphone. It features both XLR and USB-C connections. The owner of ARN's iHeart Podcast Network Australia, HT&E, released its annual report. Digital revenue was 14.6 million Australian dollars, up 56% year on year. The owner of Listener, SCA, also released its annual report. Their digital revenue was 20.7 million Australian dollars, up 35% year on year. And Listen Notes has launched Listen Clips, a tool to create podcast clips for free, and a new thing called Microfeed, a lightweight content management system which also lets you host podcasts. And in People News, Simon Cross is to join Soundwide, the owner of plug-in company Isotope, among others, as Chief Product Officer. He joins from Meta and the BBC. Fun fact, he worked for me once, and he's very good. Now, yesterday we reported on a test for some podcast creators on YouTube. Today, we found someone with access to it. So there are pictures of it in our show notes and our newsletter at podnews.net. There's a new Create Podcast link, which goes to a dialog box that explains a podcast is a type of playlist and lets you make a new playlist. Unlike a normal YouTube playlist, though, this dialog asks for a square thumbnail image, which is the standard for podcasts, of course. Some playlists in YouTube are already marked as podcasts, including the Podnews Daily, this very show. We assume it's been a manual process until now, and we haven't been asked to set a square image yet. But creators still need to upload a video file. It's not pulling from RSS at all, which means programmatic ads or any form of dynamic monetization won't work, though we do know that YouTube is selling audio ads in some territories already for their YouTube Music product. You might expect them to share revenue with podcast creators in the same way they currently do with video producers, if you're large enough. If we were to speculate, we'd guess at the same kind of playback experience as on YouTube Music, where you can select the audio or the video, might be what's coming. And YouTube could make RSS versions of podcast audio available everywhere for free, much like Anchor does, and pull visitors to YouTube to watch the video version. As a customer acquisition tool, it would drive usage of YouTube and allow them to sell audio ads off platform, perhaps. But all of this is just a guess, and until YouTube communicates more, or indeed anything, we'll be in the dark. Kai Chuck, though, is scheduled to speak at the Hot Pod Summit on Thursday. This podcast is sponsored by CBC Podcasts. CBC Podcasts is looking for its next premium quality narrative podcast series. Do you have a story or partnership to pitch to CBC Podcasts? We'd love it to be a Podnews reader. Check out cbc.ca/pitch to find out how to pitch your ideas. That's cbc.ca/pitch. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.